Hello folks, the Y Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful summer morning. Hey, the title of this video is going to be extremely long. It's called The Y Guy, a countdown to 17 huge hints Christianity chooses to ignore about hell. Now that's a long title. I don't even know if YouTube's going to allow me to put that long a title up or not. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, well anyway, where to begin? That's a pun for number 17. And one of the biggest hints is in the creation story of Genesis. Hint number 17. There's no mention of hell ever being created in the book of Genesis, or anywhere, frankly, in the Bible. Now, get this. I'm supposed to believe that God cares more about me knowing and being informed of when and how birds and bugs and alike were created than a place where countless billions are going to spend an eternity. Now, why is that ignored? And that's number 17. Wait till you get to number 1, my favorite. Anyway, hint number 16. Jews traditionally never believed in a place called hell. Okay. Hint 15. Jesus was a Jew. So much for what I've been told by preachers, that Jesus warned of hell more than anyone else. No, he didn't. He never did. The word hell never came out of his mouth. Gehenna came out of his mouth more than any place else, and that was a physical place. All right? I'm not going to get into that right now on this one. Hint number 14. There's no mention of hell anywhere in the Old Testament. Some will say, well, yes, there is. You know, my Bible says so. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Okay? Hint number 13. There's no word. This goes to hint number 14. Okay, but here's hint 13. There's no word in the Hebrew language that represents an underworld or a netherworld, i.e. hell. Okay, there's no word for that. That's a huge hint for those who you say you have it in your Old Testament. Hint number 12 along these same lines. The Greek Septuagint, which is the Old Testament written in Greek, way back, around 250 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Jerusalem. And they printed the Old Testament for the Jewish people they took back to Greece. Okay, I'll give you a little idea of that. Anyway, in that Greek Septuagint, way back then, there's no mention of hell. But yet your modern Bible has it in Old Testament? That should bring something up, red flag in you. Hint number 11. Hell is a Latin-based word from ancient Latin paganism and paganistic beliefs. Now, not only, let me see, how do I want to put this? Now, let's just go to hint number 10. According to most historians and people who've researched writings and language back then, it is assumed, okay, that Jesus spoke Aramaic and Hebrew, that he didn't speak Latin, considering the average Jew spoke Aramaic and Hebrew, and not Latin back then, okay? So it's not a far stretch to, I guess, for the historians to say that. So basically, Jesus said himself that he came for the house of Israel, not the house of Latin. Okay, that's just more of a smart aleck thing I put on the end. Hint number 9. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi in the eyes of his followers. Okay, they didn't quite, at the beginning, they didn't quite understand exactly who he was and his purpose for being here, but at least in their eyes, he was a rabbi. And a rabbi would never use a pagan word representing a pagan place that promotes pagan beliefs of a pagan kingdom ruled by a pagan god from a different language while talking to Jews. I mean, think about this. And that's only hint number 9. Hint number 8. Historically, at the time the first Bible was written, the mainstream Latin religion and government were one and the same. Okay? And they used fear to control the peasants who couldn't read or write by teaching a folklore of hell. Now, I personally read, as a side note here, I have read quotes from early government church leaders I don't have them right here in front of me because it just entered my mind just now, remembering it. I'm paraphrasing a quote, an oxymoron here, but how they would talk amongst themselves, as is recorded, laugh amongst themselves of how easy it was to manipulate the peasants with this place that they themselves didn't believe in, hell. Okay, you're going to have to research some of the writings of ancient leaders of government, which back then the church and the government, like I said, was one and the same. Okay, hint number 7. The Latins took the Greek manuscripts and letters, where hell was never mentioned before, and they inserted it 111 times in the Latin Vulgate around circa 440 AD, both in the Old and New Testament. But yet, we've heard from a previous hint that the Septuagint, which was 250 BC, 600, 700 years before this, where hell was never mentioned, and all of us in the Old Testament, all of a sudden it's in the Old Testament. Now you see why it's in your Old Testament, in some of yours. Okay. Hint number 6. The Church of England was in competition with the Church in Rome. And the Church of England printed the King James Bible using much of the Latin Vulgate to do so. Yet, the Church of England and the King James, they only put hell in it 56 times. And yet the Vulgate put it in 111 times. So the question is, what happened to those other 55 hells from the Vulgate? Another red flag. Hint number 5. None of the modern Bibles agree with how many times the word hell should exist. None of them agree. Another red flag. Hint number 4. The book of Acts provides, this is from a friend on Facebook, and I want to thank this person publicly. Hint number 4. The book of Acts provides a historical account of the early church being established. Covering 35 years, there are 27 accounts of the gospel message being preached, and hell was never mentioned. Wow. Hint number 3. Paul warned of preaching a different gospel. He never mentioned hell in his gospel. Hint number 2. There's too many discrepancies in the above hints to support the doctrine of hell. Now here's a freebie. That's not before I get to hint number 1. Answer to the question of why the word hell is in most Bibles. And I'm going to reiterate from what I said earlier, the early Latin church had a purpose, and that purpose was called deception. People hate that word. I.e., they would use fear as a tool to control the masses and for manipulation purposes. It's still happening in most modern churches today. That's sad, but it's true. That's what's going on, folks. Now, here's my favorite. This came from, I believe, this woman on Facebook that shared this with me. Gosh, I don't remember her name, and if it really was a her, I'm sorry. If it was a guy that said this and you happen to view this video, no offense intended, okay? My very favorite, hint number 1, in closing. Jesus is recorded to have taught us to pray, Our Father. Now imagine your Father as being omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, who loves each of his children to the nth degree. A father in Jeremiah 7:31 who said it never entered his mind to burn people. Would you, as a father, create a place of eternal torture for any of your children and throw them in that place if they didn't obey the rules you taught them about proper behavior? Would you create a being that you knew would rebel and would trick your children and lead the vast majority of them to that horrendous place? That is an excellent question. Excellent questions. And I want to thank my friend on Facebook for adding this to the list. Now, have you ever asked yourself why these hints are offensive to you? those of you who are offended by these hints and just don't agree with this video whatsoever, have you ever asked yourself why? Well, look me up on Facebook and let's discuss it. I have a group called The Why Guy, and my avatar is Jonathan Jones. Please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you give me a thumbs down, be polite in your responses. If you're not going to be polite, I'm going to delete your responses. Why even go there? Thank you for viewing.